I would like to welcome all of you to this Fireside Chat on Sustainability, which I'll be moderating as part of the Prime Virtual Global Forum for Responsible Management Education. Ever since the idea of sustainability was introduced by Brundtland Report, so many of us are familiar with Brundtland Report, the idea of sustainability has had a fascinating career internationally. It has created, in parts, an inclusive theater of value frames, where by inviting and involving development agencies, voluntary groups, and corporate agencies in a search for a new framework for development. It has also added visions of economics, which have in some senses gone beyond the ideas of productivities. A new sensibility in some senses of the idea of justice. As a concept, sustainability has been rather dynamic, but it has also been controversial in different ways. However, we have in the last few decades, several decades in fact, moved away from the concept of practicing sustainability. The new SDG goals seek to concretize this in an everyday domain of governance. Sustainability has added new chapters of both policy and pedagogy, and the challenge today is to enhance these possibilities. The question of sustainability in relation to corporate responsibility raises the question of ecological imagination of the organizations, which many of you inhabit. And along with those questions, I think come the question of ethics, the link between technology and ecology. How do you take decisions and what are ethical decisions in that sense? And this in turn demands that corporations go beyond monoculture and think of diversity and plurality of cultural nature. Such an effort has meant that organizations need to reinvent themselves, and it means constant innovation and reinventing in that sense. It also means it has to be reworked. You need to be, many of us who inhabit this space, whether it is in academics or industry or even as in the social sector, we need to rethink the whole idea of civics and pedagogy, because that I think becomes critical in reimagining the future. We have a very stellar panel here today. I'll very briefly introduce all of you. There is Melin, who's the director and the founder of Organic Crew. Organic Crew is a sustainable, ethical, organic apparel brand. It is all organic and made in Melbourne. I understand they also produce in Calcutta in India. They take care of about producing garments that benefit not just their customers, but also manufacturers manufacture them for them and the environment. Mel is an experienced managing director with a demonstrated history of working in apparel and fashion history, along with entertainment industry. Cheryl is joining us from Kuala Lumpur. She's the director of Deloitte Southeast Asia. She's spoken about as a visionary leader with broad strategic thinking capabilities, has a proven track record of growing professional services by almost and revenue by almost 13-fold in 8 years. She's a strong advocate of corporate governance of the future and advancing the use of analytics and technology in marketplace, especially in governance and board matters. Cheryl's, I think, when I read your biodata, Cheryl, I was very impressed with the fact that you're extremely motivated, I understand, by diversity. And you feel that the diversity will add to organizations' strength and helps contribute in the work environment. She's passionate and driven by identifying world-class talent, which adds to the diversity. And with her leadership, she has expanded headcount in several organizations from 100 to 200 business firms, which has people from more than 10 different nationalities. She's of course widely published in different newspapers and dailies in different newspapers in Malaysia. Emma Barber joins us from Dubai, UAE. She's the managing director of Degrade. Welcome, Emma. Emma is responsible for day-to-day running of Degrade. And managing the teams that oversee product development. She overlooks sales and the Simply Bottles, which is I understand is a recycling initiative, if I'm correct.
Yes.
She's also a key spokesman and ambassador for the company. And what is extremely important to Emma is that she believes that she personally, along with DMake, she feels that you have to make a positive impact in the world. She believes that recycling plastic into new products is part of the solution to have a greener future for the planet. She brings with her 30 years of experience in the retail and fashion industry. Mel, I guess it resonates with you. In her words, in order to become dynamic, productive, and efficient team, she believes that it is important that everyone enjoys their work and feels valued and recognized. In her words, we recruited an expert team that shares our vision, who are committed to a high standard of customer service and being environmentally responsible. She says, I enjoy this with our team every day. So thank you, Emma, for joining us. Forum joins us from Mumbai. She's, of course, the CSR head of Tata Power. Tata, as many of us know, is a very respected brand, one of the most trusted brands in India. With 15 years of experience in diverse areas of social development, she has worked in several multi-sectoral platforms and alliances to build corporate citizenship, social development, inclusivity, and diversity, social innovation, business excellence. She is what she calls as a synergies champion, building capabilities and bridging gaps between stakeholders and the so-called undeserved communities, so as to provide them access to knowledge, exposure, and value chains for the organized industry. She spent a long time with Indian Hotel Group, which is, I think, part of the Tata Group, where she set up the CSR function and championed public-private partnership programs, which were largely in skill building, heritage and culture, supplementary nutrition, disaster response, and rehabilitation of affected sections of the society, especially post 26/11, the Mumbai terror attacks. As a CSR functioning here in Tata Power, she champions several women empowerment-linked initiatives. She has been the core member of the Tata Group's Affirmative Action Program, and she's been championing supplier diversity, and has been recognized as one of 101 most impactful CSR leaders by the World CSR Congress. So welcome all of you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. So I just want to start in a more sort of the whole idea of sustainability itself. I think that we have a very wide kind of a panel with variety of perspectives here. Each one of you probably brings with you your own specificity to the understanding of sustainability and what it means. So I was wondering whether, Emma, would you like to reflect on what it means to you?
That's a typical Zoom error. Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, thank you very much. And it's lovely to be here with this esteemed panel. So in terms of sustainability, we at Degrade are all about sustainability in terms of trying to make sure that we're not using up to extra natural resources, that we're repurposing a resource that's already been made. But I think in a wider context, sustainability has to be about longevity, creating jobs, creating wealth as well. No business is going to be sustainable if they can't pay the rent and pay the staff. So I think, there's always a little bit of a feeling that, a sustainable business should be run on a charitable way, or it shouldn't be making a profit, or that it shouldn't be, sort of like in big business. Well, we feel that we are a sustainable business, but we have a team of people who hopefully have got a challenging and exciting career path that will be with us for a long time. And that's extremely important, that your business is has longevity. So I'm sure the other panelists will have much more to add to that. But from my perspective, we've got to also understand that we've got to be a business first and foremost, and create jobs and create wealth.
Thank you, Emma. Well, what do you think about, I think as someone who's running your own business, and with a very clear understanding and focus of what you wish to do with it, which is probably the foundation of your business. Does what Emma say resonate with you?
Yes, absolutely. So I started the business having that goal in mind straight away, which was, to use the least amount of resources in the best possible way and cause the least harm to the planet, the people, and, obviously, have, the least detriment to all of that. So everything that Emma said definitely resonated with me. It's very hard sometimes to be able to make profit when you're when you're paying people above, a living wage, and you have all the accreditations for that. Plus, you're producing inorganic materials, and they cost a lot more. And obviously, organic has a way lower use in terms of natural resources like water, for example. So we tick all the boxes, and we started really small to be able to control all of that and to make sure that, we knew exactly what we were doing. So that was, really important as well to us. But the profit part is definitely the most tricky part for me, because obviously at the moment, the value equation isn't there, which I know we're talking about a bit later. So that's the challenge, to educate people on the true cost of what we're trying to do and the benefit of that.
So, so you're saying is profit, if I'm hearing correctly from Emma and Mel, is it profit is one of the critical components of a sustainable business. Sustainability is the important, but if you don't have a sustainable business which generates profits, you're not going anywhere with it. So is there any other components that you would think about, Mel, which you think about beyond what just the profit? Because there must be some things that moved you to set up something which is ecological, organic.
Yes, well, my two greatest things were to ensure that we had all of the ethical accreditations. So, I saw the True Cost film, to be honest, and I was devastated after working for years in fashion and all sorts of other things like consumer products for the Walt Disney Company, for example. So I saw that film and I was so moved to make a difference, and I thought, well, what can I do? As well as producing high quality products. I think that's super important, because I think that is sustainability to me. So if you can make something that is of high quality and it lasts years and years and years, and then potentially is either recyclable or biodegradable, it causes the least amount of harm to the planet. And then we are also providing workers with, the least harmful, I guess manufacturing, and, from growing the cotton right through to manufacturing, there's no toxic chemicals and all that sort of stuff. That's also really important to me. So, but I think in terms of the sustainability thing, I think quality is also, of any product that you make, is really important these days. And I think that's something that people are starting to also use, that cost per wear or cost per use, rather than this, throwaway fashion. They're actually saying, well, I'll pay more money because it'll last more years.
Well, um, of, of what am I, Tata is a very big group, and Tata Power is, I mean, you're hearing these conversations. I'm just wondering, from a perspective located where you are located, how do you look at sustainability? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting to hear Emma and Malin also share about how wealth creation and quality is important. So picking up from there, the way Tatas have, looked at this whole subject is conscious capitalism, as one puts it, to say that while you are doing profit, while you're growing, how inclusive is your business, how sensitive is your business to what it does to produce wealth first. And then, of course, after production of wealth, what's very important is how is that wealth distributed, right? Who is getting rich as we all produce goods, services, serve needs, serve gaps, and have healthy competition in the economy. With that, how do you make things accessible and inclusive for the underserved, especially in the Indian context, Chandrika, it's very important that in a developing country context, how do you ensure access to skill, access to exposure, access to value chains of organized industry itself, because a lot of industry is unorganized. So when we look at wealth creation in that large context, who is getting rich and how is that being distributed well? Also, how can we do production and consumption in a way that more people get rich? A wider base earns and finds access to resources is a very important element of the Tata philosophy. And that is the kind of work that CSR also furthers, which acts as an enabler for communities and groups which find it difficult to access such resources and which want to participate in a more fruitful economic pursuit. So those are some perspectives, and I would love to share more in terms of examples as we go along.
Cheryl, you've heard the others. I was wondering what your thoughts are.
Thanks, Chandrika. And first of all, I think before I start ranting along what I feel, I just want to pay my respects and kudos to all of you three ladies for really having the guts to take on something you're passionate about from a sustainable standpoint and trying to make a living out of it. And I think to Emma's point, profitability in a more sustainable and longevity of it is also important. And I totally hear that. And all of you are, I mean, it's challenging, right? If you start something new, you are passionate about a particular sustainable theme and you're trying to run a business whilst having so much challenges and even barriers to entry in the market. It's not a bed of roses, I must say. And so kudos to all of you, really. I just wanted to say that, just put that into perspective. Because of my background, I deal a lot with the large corporates, large multinationals, global large cap companies, and I deal with a lot of board of directors, senior management, CEOs, and I also deal with their sustainability practices. I perform a lot of reviews. I actually deep dive into the ugly world of sustainability, I would say, that's actually been adopted by these large corporates. So I'll come from that perspective, okay? And maybe that will give a different flavor to what has been shared amongst the three ladies, wonderful three ladies just now. So there's a constant dichotomy, the push and pull of profits of economics versus sustainability, right? It's always struggling to, when one is growing, there tend to be a dichotomy of thinking that the other will suffer or will regress. So I think for me, sustainability is finding that magic formula, that sweet spot where making money or profits goes along hand in hand with value creation from sustainability practices. And I also want to say this as well. Sustainability is not a tick in the box exercise. All right.
Mhm.
So a lot of regulators, a lot of government policymakers and all that have been imposing sustainability as a compliance. For example, sustainability reporting, or getting certification, ethical certification, whatsoever. They had to do this because nothing was moving, or it was not moving fast enough. Now, if we can find that magic formula, that sweet spot where large corporations, because like it or not, as human beings, we go to work, we earn a living, and we earn an income in order to have food every day, and to have a shelter and all that. So we are intertwined in a way. Our personal lives and our working lives, the corporate lives, are intertwined. So I think it's important that humanity embrace sustainability in all its respects, personal life as well as your working life, right? And it cuts across all levels of the corporate or the business world, from the clerks, from the associates, all the way up to the board of directors or even the major shareholders, right? It needs to come to that magic moment for us to be able to save our planet. As you all were speaking, I remember I was watching David Attenborough, his famous video, and the whole 1.5, I think it was 1 hour, 2 hours. It was 1 hour full of negativity, and I thought, oh my God, that's the end of the planet, and it was the last half an hour where he talks about hope, about what needs to be done. It was so simple. It was so simple. It's just about, not doing very simple things. And actually the solution is very simplistic, right? And I think sometimes corporates or even businesses tend to they tend to overdo it. It's overrated at times, right? And hence you see the cost of, as Melanie was speaking, the cost of being organic becomes much more so, right? I think it's about give and take. Corporates needs to embrace the sustainability principles, the 17 SDGs that we know it, right, in a very holistic way, and not just do it because they have to. Once we reach that ethos, so to speak, right, once the board of directors, once the shareholders, tone from the top is very clear around what is their passion, or they even can pick a couple of the SDGs and say, okay, these are the things that we want to drive our businesses, or drive our profitability, or drive our value creation, you will see all the other value chains falling into place, right? And because we are so intertwined, the ecosystem is so intertwined. Whenever I perform a lot of this sustainability work, it's like a chain reaction. So one begets the other. I do a lot of work for United Nations as well around their funding of green projects and whatnot. So it's all about just making sure every single human being plays their part in achieving their personal sustainability objectives, whichever it is. So yeah, I just wanted to add that perspective. Thank you, Chandrika.
Thank you, Cheryl, for bringing that point, because I think it's very, very important. And I think you just hit the nail on its head, literally, because I think that also takes me to, some of the things that we're all concerned about, and I'm going to play the provocateur. I think you've already raised an important point that, what happens when you're just ticking the boxes? What happens when, it becomes a ticking game where, because it's the new buzzword, sustainability is a new buzzword in almost all entire corporate sector and the academic world. And I think you're raising the question: how do you put that meaning into that word? Because how do you make it meaningful? How does it go beyond certifications and certificates, which just becomes, in some senses, the veneer?
Sorry, Chandrika. So quick one. You also triggered another point. So you mentioned ticking the box, yes. But I also think a lot of large companies nowadays, jump on that sustainability bandwagon because it's the in thing to do, right? It's like a branding thing. It is going to give me more customers, you know, because people are very conscious right now in terms of what they buy and their purchasing power. I think that's also a wrong direction to go ahead. I'll give you a very simple example that happened very recently. So MCO happened March 2020, right? Now, one of the things that Malaysia is very famous for is our rubber gloves. So I think we've got the top 3 largest rubber gloves manufacturers sitting in Malaysia. Yes. So like the NHS, Emma, so all their rubber gloves come from Malaysia. We are their biggest, our biggest importer of rubber gloves, and out the US as well. So when MCO happened, so obviously there was a spike in the rubber gloves, of the nitrile gloves demand. And their share price skyrocketed. The shareholders make tons of money, and they profited from that particular. So everybody else was regressing from a profitability, but theirs was the opposite, right? Because they were in the right industry. Interestingly enough, sometime 6 months thereafter, there were news that got leaked around modern slavery issues that they have. I won't go into details, you can Google them, but it's about how they treat their workers, foreign workers, as well as the conditions that they were living in that was provided by the company, of course. And that has caused the whole stock market, shares of in the stock market to plunge to where it was like 10 years ago. I know, in a matter of a few months, right? And there was so much hype around the practices that they had, and it was really driven by the key investors of the shares. And these key investors, for example, one of them was BlackRock, and BlackRock, as you know, is a true advocate of sustainability in the investments that they have, and they had the loudest voice. Now the shareholders were trying to fix it from a brand and reputation standpoint. But what they didn't realize is they did not embrace the true issue and took a holistic solution to solve the modern slavery issue that they have, in order to have a more sustainable or longer term solution for their workers. They just took a very quick fix and say, oh no, they did a quick video and say, oh look, everything is spick and span again. So I think they missed the issue lah. They missed the issue. So when you said that, I wanted to bring out the example because it just triggered to me that because of the education and, in a way, the movement that we have from a sustainability standpoint across the globe, you will realize that more and more investors or more and more stakeholders are becoming more sustainability intelligent.
That's an important, very good word. I think I'm going to use that more. Sustainability intelligence, you know, where
it's like the sustainability quotient.
Yes.
One new quotient has come in.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just thinking, like, Cheryl's raised an important point of, you said sustainability intelligence, sustainability quotient, the fact that it's become fashionable. It's a sexy word to use. It's something that's become fashionable and something that we must embrace. As someone from Tata Power, and Tata's is like seen as one of the really trusted brands in the country, and has kind of said that they walk that talk of embracing certain values. I'm wondering how you're taking this conversation. What am I thinking? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, so Cheryl raised a very beautiful point of saying it has to be both personal and professional. And the tick in the box can go away only when that line goes away between the personal and the professional as well, because the choices. So say, for example, I'm a consumer of certain lifestyle, of certain goods. What do I choose? How do I choose it? Do I go that extra mile to pick up the right solution, to pick up the more sustainable solutions? Do I want to pay that additional price? So it is education on both sides. And as Tata Power, we have seen a lot of education with people becoming more conscious about cleaner forms of energy. Even across down the value chain in rural regions where diesel sets are most used. When people see a better form of living, which is less polluting, people wish to choose it today. So a big part of this whole narrative is also education and authentic education rather than the fanciness of the word. So I think the movement of sustainability will also gain a lot by ensuring a very transparent form of dialogue, the kind that we are having today, Chandrika, a very transparent form of outlining the challenges and issues like the rubber glove that was being spoken about. So you don't have to whitewash it. You don't have to greenwash things, because life is not as simple as pick up an issue and then, solve it in a few minutes or a few days and get your PR right. So that is where a lot of work has been done by Tatas as well. Say, for example, the kind of advertisements that Titan runs, for example, and the kind of backlash it gets, the kind of dialogue it churns. So for the people who have not probably been tracking that within India, there is a form of lock on certain dialogues itself in the society. So how do we ensure transparent dialogue to begin with? Intercaste marriages in India have not been easy. Inclusion of historically marginalized communities in our educational system requiring that affirmative action or a reservation has not been easy. And these are iterative spaces, these are complex spaces, which will only be addressed best with the form of transparent dialogue, transparent communication, education, awareness, and professionals like us coming together and discussing both the realities of the business, what we need to work with, and the ideals or the kind of circular economy or sustainability goals that we wish to chase for the sustainability of both our businesses as well as the society in which we run our businesses. So that's one perspective, Chandrika.
I'd like to just add something to that, because I think what you're saying, both Cheryl and Forum are right. It has to come from the top. What we find, basically, we're a B2B business. So we're offering companies a sustainable option for product they're already buying. So they're buying uniforms, they're buying accessories, workwear. We're just saying to them, look, rather than buying it from conventional manufacturing sources, you're buying a polyester uniform, why not make it from recycled product, which is great and everybody loves it, wonderful. But if it's not coming from the top, and if the company doesn't truly believe in it, what happens is we get as far as the procurement manager, who then says, oh, you want us to pay $5 more for a top? No, that's not going to happen. So unless you have the CEO really committed, then it's going to get blocked, because at the end of the day, we have a fragmented supply chain because we collect the plastic here. It gets flaked, it gets put into fiber, it gets put into yarn, it gets made into uniform. It's slightly more fragmented. So we are about 10% more expensive, but for that 10%, you're getting a truly high quality sustainable product, which then you can market the hell out of. You can tell the world that you're doing something that's tangible. So, we're trying to say to companies, look, greenwashing is all well and good. Collecting a few bottles in your head office and saying you're recycling is just part of the entire loop. You have to then follow this up. You have to put your money where your mouth is. You can't just say we're recycling a few bottles. Where's the evidence? Where's the tangible outcome that what you're doing with the bottles? And Forum, your point about education is right, because this is about human behavior. This is about people taking personal responsibility. Most of the plastic that ends up in the ocean is because someone's thrown it there. It's not the fault of the plastic. It didn't make its way to the beach, the desert, the sea, whatever. It's because people can't be bothered, they're lazy, or there aren't correct infrastructures in place, which is a government thing. I'm sure we'll come on to that. But I think it has to come from the top. It has to be embedded in the culture. They have to truly believe they want to do something to make a difference. And then it also goes all the way down to people understanding and being educated and taking a personal responsibility.
Enrica, if I can just, sorry, Melanie, go ahead, please. I'll come after you.
I was just going to quickly add that I think a lot of this also has to be consumer driven. I think there definitely is a movement happening, and I think the what the example Cheryl gave about the shareholders, saying this isn't good enough. I think that's a lot of that is also being led by consumers not thinking it's good enough anymore. Like, people are aware of what's going on with slave labor, and we all know where it's happening. And this is new. This is like really kind of exciting, and it's liberating because, enough is enough. And, I've worked for so many big corporates, and really, like, talking about ticking the boxes, I worked for one big corporate who said, oh, if Levi's have ticked that box, we'll be right, don't worry about it. So that happened all the time, and I'm not proud of that, but that was, maybe 15 years ago. Times have changed. And consumers are leading this. And, I get, I've got goosebumps now. I get like so many customers asking me questions. What are your accreditations? Where's your cotton from? Who's growing it? How much water are you using? Blah, blah, blah. So I think, it's exciting that the consumers are actually driving the CEOs to make change. And the people who are being left behind are going to, they're the ones that, we'll find down the track are going to lose their businesses because they're not keeping up with this movement.
Yeah. So, Chandrika, I think what Emma and Melanie segues quite nicely to what I'm going to talk about. The stark reality is that different countries and even different level of economics of a consumer group will have different reactions to the word sustainability. All right. Yeah. And it's different. It's obviously driven by their reality. All right. Sad to say, there's still quite a large amount of population in the world. I think more than 50% from the last statistics I've seen, where the population is below the poverty level, right? And unfortunately, when you talk about sustainability to them, they look at you with starry-eyed, deer in headlights, and they're like, I'm just surviving, trying to survive. I'm trying to stay alive. Okay. So like, for example, in the UK and Australia, I think they are at the different life cycle of that sustainability maturity model, right? You have come to a sort of like a point of critical mass, and your socioeconomic situation has elevated across the board in order for you to have a decent quality of life. In many other countries which I've worked in, for example, I worked in Myanmar, in the Philippines, Indonesia, and in Cambodia, where they don't even have a house, right? And hence, it all comes to the dollar and cents. But I would say one of the most powerful trigger event, or even I call it a catalyst, is about the right policy being driven. Now, I'll give an example. In a lot of the Southeast Asian country, there was a drive around circular economy, and that drive started to look at the most simplest thing. What is the cost of packaging? And hence, that will be that preferred choice or in that supply chain for most of the vendors, right? For most of business. So plastic is the cheapest form of packaging in this part of the world. In order for us to change that, we had to incentivize businesses to move from plastic to something else more sustainable, okay, or more organic.
Just to jump in there, Cheryl, just to say that actually plastic is almost in 99% of cases the greenest possible packaging solution. So I don't think, we need to also understand the scientific facts. Paper, aluminium, and glass are actually far worse for the environment than plastic is. And also the other important point here is that plastic makes up 1% of all waste. So we've put all our time and attention, and there's so much focus on banning plastic and getting rid of plastic, when actually it's 1% of the waste. It's because it floats in the sea, you can see it, and it flies out the desert, you can see it. But there's a huge amount. In fact, and Melanie will agree with me here, 30% of all landfill is made up with textiles. Because the fashion industry is incredibly polluting, but no one is stopping that Instagrammer wearing a new outfit because she wore the other dress already on Instagram and she can't wear it again. So, fast fashion has a huge amount of it's a bad, we need to do something about fast fashion, and we mustn't keep the focus on getting rid of plastic. Of course, nothing should be single use. Nothing should be single use. There is
Yes,
no
no,
one
so
way. You
correct.
can't do something one way. Of course you can't. But I
Yes.
just want to like get in there. Plastic is not the enemy.
Totally understand. So I understand that, but I'm just telling you what happened, lah, right? The events that happened. So single-use plastic was a big, big dramatic situation, and there was so much hype about it. But I just wanted to bring in what was the intervention, right? So they decided to impose a monetary cost to the use of plastic, and then reduce the cost of using something more sustainable, whether it's paper or recyclable plastic, whatever it is, right? Or bringing your own containers, for example. Here we like to pack food and we bring our containers. So I think it's about just finding that right solution to change
absolutely.
the behavior. Yeah.
The waste has to have a value. I mean, what the example we say all the time is when you do a desert cleanup, what you don't find is money. No one throws it away. And actually, a lot of money, Australian money, is made out of plastic. Most money around the world is made out of plastic. You don't find that littered down.
Is it
the
single
beach.
use, by the way?
In my case, it quite often is. But you don't find it littered.
There's
down
a
the
whole
beach.
value chain to single-use plastic, and there are so many stakeholders who don't want it touched. You're right.
Yes.
But it needs to be seen as a resource. Not even talking about plastic, all waste. Whether it be aluminium, whether it be paper. It has to be seen as a resource that has a value, and it shouldn't be just thrown away willy-nilly. Whatever it is. I don't mean to bang the drum on plastic at all. And I'm very much an advocate of we need to. The 5 R's. The first one is refuse. We must start refusing, and this is again about changing behaviour and about understanding the facts. Which is incredibly important, and we need to educate children. We need to start young.
I think it brings us back to even the points that Mel had raised, right in the beginning about the cost per use. The whole issue of quality. What's the cost per use in that sense of the products that we're using, which is that it's not just about because I think we've got caught in a lot of politically correct spaces. I think that some of the discussion that we've had earlier, because there's a certain political correctness that has come around the discussion of sustainability, which focuses on, as you said, on certain materialities and so to say, things like plastics, things like other things. But what is also extremely important somewhere probably is the point that Cheryl touched upon, but the whole idea of the sustainability for different geographies, what might be, or for different communities. The energy consumption, the energy consumption of communities, which you're talking of in Myanmar or in Indonesia or in Kuala Lumpur, the energy consumption might be much less as compared to the average Western world within Europe or North America. So how do you factor that in? How do you look at waste, so to say? So I think that's also another.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Chandrika.
No, please, Varun, you're saying something.
No, so I in fact resonate so much with that, what Cheryl just said about the policy, because policy again will shape what you do, the questions that you're raising about how do you treat it in a viable one manner, and what Emma was mentioning about not looking at anything as an undealable substance and continuously finding ways of innovating. But till the time there is a policy thrust on the right kind of right kind of drive and an end-to-end, including industry, including academia. So an example from India, say single-use plastic itself, and then bamboo was found as an alternative. So a whole region came together and worked on bamboo as a viable alternative. Then if we have to look at how do you make that again inclusive? Do you want one entrepreneur to come and produce an alternative and become rich? How will that serve a larger audience? So there again, a policy came in some states and some parts of the country where they said that women's groups will be trained or artisans groups will be trained to find those alternatives, to make them viable and to connect them with the value chain, both backward and forward. So these are two important elements. One element of the policy thrust. Second element of ensuring a multi-sectoral approach, along with involving the right kind of champions and stakeholders, and then ensuring that, again, you don't create a bigger evil in trying to solve the first evil or the first gap. So how do you keep recalibrating yourself through that journey?
That's really important. And I think also that it's something about priorities. I was talking to a senior politician of what we would probably call a third world country. And he was saying that while they, of course, want to focus on the fact that it's an incredibly polluting country, their main focus has to be on making sure their population has enough food to eat, that child mortality levels are being raised. There's other focuses on healthcare, on food, on all these things before they can get around to making sure that the waste being picked up and managed properly. But of course he understood that is very important, and they have a bigger picture to look at. It's not just about their country. If their waste is polluting, rivers and the oceans, then of course they have to take a responsibility. But where does the money go? There's a certain amount of money, and surely that has to be spent on different priorities. So you're absolutely right. I think there is about so many ways that we have to look at this. It's about making sure that circularity, that sustainability is a priority, along with all those other very important things.
And as someone who's moving between both a personal commitment to that space and a professional, because you're running an organization company which is anchored on that, and you're also moving between countries like India and Australia. Do you see that tension that is being talked about here in this group?
Sorry, who are you addressing that question to?
Mel.
Oh, sorry. What was that? Can you repeat the question?
Well, I was just wondering whether, because we're talking about certain tensions that are that are within this world of sustainability, depending on geography, location, economic status, and there's a tension there. But Emma has alluded to Forum, and Cheryl, they've all spoken to, and your business. You personally have a commitment, both personally and professionally. Your business is founded on a certain principles of ecological, organic, but you're also moving between India, places like Calcutta and Kolkata, and Australia. Do you see those tensions that are being discussed here?
In terms of the differences between India and Australia, working with India and Australia,
just the consumption, looking at the consumption pattern, because about consuming certain kind of products which are where it would be where you're saying it's all right, it's expensive, doesn't matter. Do you see that tension between the two geographies?
Well, I think obviously, as I think Cheryl was saying before, our country is privileged, and the movement in terms of spending more money on what's ethical and having social responsibility, we're more afforded to that. And the way I see it is, if you are privileged and you are in a position where you can help others, then we should be doing that. I think there's definitely more businesses in Australia and countries like Australia that are seeing it as a mandatory. And then, I've spent a lot of time in India. I've traveled right through India with fair trade. I have, when I started the business, I spent time in the actual cooperatives that grow the cotton. And, it was really important to me that, we were talking about, the cost of what we're doing and what cost, to the people and the planet, it takes into account. And, when I was there looking at these cooperatives, whether the crop fails or succeeds, the farmer in these cooperatives still get paid. So, those sorts of things are so important to me, because, it's so important to have, the value equation, my values incorporated into, the whole business, and making sure that, we're doing everything we possibly can to you know, make sure that people are having, you know, earning a living wage, not just a minimum wage in India. So does that answer?
Yes, ma'am. So, Cheryl, just coming back to you on some of the points that you raised, and I think this panel has raised some, very, very important points, saying that, while, economic sustainability is extremely important, profits are important, but at the same time, there's also a challenge of it becoming something that you might just become a box, something that you tick on the box, or maybe just become certification, and that we need to go beyond that. And we need to create value. Corporates see the value and others see value. How does one negotiate their space? The whole thing, the holistic value creation that many talk about. Because at one level, what I'm hearing is that both the stakeholder-shareholder debate is actually a non-existent debate, and that what we need is a different kind of groundedness, right? That's what you're alluding to, Cheryl.
Thanks, Chandrika, and thank you for all the wonderful comments. Something Emma said triggered a couple of points, and I thought I'll challenge that in this fireside chat. Emma brought up a point around a fragmented supply chain. I think that needs to be fixed, right? That's a great challenge out there. You've got people doing so many good stuff out there, pockets of them, but they are not really intertwined in a very holistic, tight model where each value creation spills over to the next, and the end consumer enjoys the cost, so to speak, right? So I think we need to think about that quite seriously, globally as well, and the great minds need to come together to come up with that right solution to fix that fragmented thinking around that. The other thing that I think we spoke about as well is around the fact that, and Melanie and Emma and Forum alluded to, was the fact that when you are in a survival mode, there is no, sustainability is on the back seat. Like, for example, Emma was saying about, she spoke to a political leader, and he's saying there's a priority. But I beg to differ. You can drive certain basic values or certain basic needs with a sustainable solution, right? I've seen where livelihood are built, income and are earned through a sustainable initiative, for example. So you can intertwine a solution that is sustainable yet dealing with the basic needs of a population, right? So I think they cannot, a politician or a government official or a leader cannot take it out of that. The sustainability theme cannot be like, I'll put it in a back seat. It's like a drawer. I'll keep it there, set aside. I'll prioritize everything else. I want to get my votes and hence give money, feed the people or whatever, right? I think it's got to be more holistic than that. So I will challenge that too. I think we need to hear politicians or leaders that are more sustainability correct.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, Cheryl. And I think you mentioned you'd worked in the Philippines, and we also we have a big Filipino community here in Dubai. And actually, I was on a webinar with somebody from the Philippines, and what they were saying is, even though they are what's known as a poor country, they've got such a sustainability drive, and they're now they have no open landfill anymore. You hear those horrendous stories about Smoky Mountain. Everything's undercover. Everything is now being streamlined and made modern, and they're managing their waste. And I mean that's the exact story about what you're saying. Just because you're a poor country doesn't mean to say that you can't manage things in the right way. Absolutely.
Yes.
And we are building livelihoods out of it. So the way to do it is important. So it is not again the state pushing it and saying I'll do it, but they're also doing it in a way that is making people earn a bread and run homes.
That's going back to the very first point where we started, that sustainability needs to generate income.
Yes. In every way.
Very much.
Yeah.
That's the base.
So Chandrika, I think to your last question around the measurement, the cost per usage or whatever, right? I've done so much sustainability reporting, and we talk about materiality, right? In a company. So we then We then sort of prioritize the materiality. And then how do you measure that impact? So I think a lot of people keep thinking about the how should I say, the explicit value of it, and not the intrinsic value. So they always come to the dollars and cents, the quantitative. But there's also a whole range of qualitative value that has not been fully developed in a more sophisticated way to be reported to shareholders or stakeholders to say, hey, yes, this is a cost of us taking on this sustainability
so what I'm hearing,
project. Yeah.
Tell you what I'm hearing. So very, very important point. So what you're hearing, Cheryl, as you're saying is, so it's not just economics, because sustainability is something beyond economics.
It's beyond that. Yeah. I mean, you've got to pair the two. Yeah.
Yes, there are other costs to it, which probably cannot be measured, and you cannot put a number to it, And some of those costs are tacit. Sometimes you have to be trustees in some senses to the future, because you cannot just talk about economics in terms of today and the profits in terms of, or just the bottom line. Because it's a cost about in terms of timelines, in terms of generations, in terms of communities. There are other costs which are beyond economics. In fact, I think one of the things we're saying is, while economics is important, and there's a whole idea of the profit is important for sustainable business and even to make business sense and to be within that space. But it is not something which is just about brand reputation or reputation of organizations or or spaces in that sense. It's not just about certification. It is something much more important. So just want to come to a last round where I want to ask all of you to say, how important is then a certain kind of leadership or other players within the space when you come to decisions like this?
This is a very important one, and I think I would like to take a go at it, Chandrika. I think this bit of ESG ratings, the current one, and I'll pick up from where Cheryl was also mentioning that the ESG ratings are not just critical for measuring and reporting today, but also for attracting investments, and for a power company like us. Somehow, like you're saying, the competitive space or the peer space itself has become very ESG conscious. And still thermal power is not gone out of the window, right? And it can never go. So you have to balance between those traditional forms of power generation to all the new stuff we're doing, and a whole lot of focus on renewables. But that's 5 years old, and thermal power is 100 years old. Right, so hydroelectricity, which was considered healthy at one point, or a lesser evil than the thermal generation, is also 100 years old. So one has to look at a continuum and a timeline to things to say that are we trying to weave up some magic here, or are we really trying to ensure, like we were mentioning, authentic and not just measurable, but growth which is with value. And that intrinsic value measurement, I think a very big part of it will happen through collectives. Because one company pegged against another company, or one brand pegged against another brand, is not going to work. There is no competitiveness in trying to be more sustainable than the other. And that's just a wrong platform or the wrong starting point for the whole sustainability movement, if we are going to go the business mindset and apply it to sustainability. So you cannot be more sustainable than the other. That itself is, then you're not sustainable. It's an oxymoron, So one needs to do this together. The collective approaches are the key. The way we then educate will be different. The way that the narrative gets built is not going to be like-to-like comparisons and trying to put some value to everything in economic terms alone. But then the dialogue will start talking about problems, which are not just mine alone, but the whole industries. And then how do we address those problems in an authentic manner? And find those balances and sweet spots that we were talking about. But you cannot do this individually. And that is the defeat of the whole sustainability movement if it goes there. and it will never go forward till the time the only way to do it is going to be a collective way. So that's one thing which I very strongly feel about.
Gerald?
Chandrika, your question about the leadership, right? I give you 4 words. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. That is a stark difference and a whole change in movement, global movement on sustainability practices. I've got investors, I was speaking to investors around sustainability kind of work when Donald Trump came to power, everything was halted, nothing moved. Agreements that were between governments could not be signed because obviously Donald Trump has certain perspective around the climate change. So and everybody was so happy. I mean, I work a lot with a lot of sustainable organizations. Everybody was so happy when Joe Biden came in as the president and things could move again, right? Yeah. So that in itself is an epitome. It's a fantastic example of leadership, right? Leadership. It makes so much difference in terms of whether things can move, whether the global movement continues or not. So I just want to pick that anecdotal analogy. Yes,
very important point. Emma, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I mean, Forum, for me, what you've said sums it up. It has to be authentic. Leadership has to be authentic. You can't pay lip service. You can't just do it because you want to make a nod to the shareholders and pretend you're doing it. It has to be authentic throughout the entire DNA of the business. You're right. There is no such thing as I'm better at sustainability than you. What we found, we've been running Degrade now for nearly 12 years, and part of what we've been doing in that last decade has been building relationships with the key stakeholders. So whether that is the government, whether it's the businesses that we work with, the waste management companies, that we have to do it in a joined up, authentic, and we're all in it together. We have to do it as a team, and we need government regulation. There needs to be carrot and stick. The government also has to push this through, as well as encouraging people through education and through rewarding. We also maybe in some countries it works where there's a penalty, there's a consequence for not doing a sustainable job. So there has to be a bit of both from the top.
Sure. Melina, would you like to add something to that?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm from Australia's perspective, our Prime Minister doesn't believe in climate change. We're so far behind. It's totally frustrating, and seriously, I think he's really good friends with Donald Trump, actually.
Yes, they wear the same hat, the cap.
Everyone knows.
They go by this, yes.
It's an embarrassment, but he's slowly coming around because his voters are starting to get more intelligent, and as I said before, it's being directed from the bottom. Like we have going through all sorts of things, from women's rights here to climate activists, with the whole global movement. Really, my kids all go to the marches, leave school, they love that. But all of this groundswell of activity within Australia is pushing up to the leadership finally. It's taken a long time, and it's frustrating for businesses like myself. We get absolutely no help or benefit for doing the right thing. That can be really frustrating, because it's hard to make profit, because I'm compared to a lot of other brands that don't have any form of accreditation or responsibility or, all that sort of stuff. And I can't price myself higher, otherwise my product won't sell. The thing is that if my product's compared to another product, I'm sort of saying to the customer, where your values, like wear a product that has caused no other human harm. I can say that because I literally am so small that I have, from the very start, gone to every single touch point of the business, from where the cotton is grown right through to the store, from seed to store. I can trace the human impact. I can trace the environmental impact. And I can then say, okay, if this pair of pants is $120 and someone else's pair of pants is $120, this is the value you're getting, because you can wear this and know, that we haven't hurt the planet, we haven't hurt any animals, and we certainly haven't hurt any other human beings. And we've in fact empowered them to make, to help improve their lives. Like, I could talk for hours about, the cooperatives we work with in India that have opened schools, have, creating product that doesn't harm people when they're actually dyeing the garments. And, and as I said before, the farmers get paid regardless whether the weather conditions aren't right and their crop fails. So, all of those things, I think, add to the value. And, in terms of leadership in our country, I think things are changing, which is exciting. And our customer base is certainly demanding that change, which is great.
So if I'm hearing it correct, it's not an easy path to walk either, at one level. It's a tough path, and you're saying is, that there's so I think it comes back to what the points that was being raised by Forum about education, or Emma also emphasized on the whole need for education, the larger education, not in the terms of literacy, but the larger community, where there's an ecological understanding of what it means to have certain, because the whole idea of the collective, that the fact that there's a larger education which might come about, or an understanding that might come around in communities and geographies and locations about, and where you might as a collective understand that it's not just about economics, it's not just about dollars and pennies, as Cheryl was referring to. There is a qualitative part to it, because we are in some senses the trustees for that, the future, for future generation, future of the planet, in that sense. So it's a much larger debate, which while it is about, of course, about profitability and about sustaining and surviving this time, but it is also about what we owe probably to the future generations in that sense. Would I be correct in kind of saying that would be, in some senses, what we've also been discussing through the...
Totally. And that, with that note, it's the right way to probably sum up, to say that, these endeavors are long-term. These endeavors need to be co-created, and the kind of value system, both personal and business, need to align in some ways, and which cannot happen without many actors acting together.
So while wealth creation is important, the wealth creation, the idea of definition of wealth itself might need to change to incorporate a different meaning and different kind of a set of factors, or certain different kind of materialities, so to say.
Value versus wealth.
That's a nice way to put it. And so I'd like to thank all of you for joining, us this afternoon, evening, different locations, and taking out the time to have this conversation. I think we could have gone on for a much longer. It's a topic that generates so much passion, and so much still left unsaid, and so many issues that we can still talk about. But hopefully, over the chat, and we will continue this conversation on different forums. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.